Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And thank you, Kesha, for that wonderful analyst insight. I think that's some very great data you had to share. Next up, we have our visionary insight speaker, Renata Paulicicio with ESPN. Renata, can you maybe give us a little bit of information before you kick off into your presentation?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this presentation is about storytelling. As I like saying, is intended to put the method behind the magic or the science behind the magic and helping all storytellers out there, research data storytellers and storytellers in general to have some insights and some data to, just tell more effective, outstanding, and memorable stories. So without further ado, thank you for the intro. So that's it. That's really the objective of this presentation, is to really understand what makes the most powerful and memory stories in sports. If I ask all of you, what's your favorite movie or what's your favorite book? I'm sure most of you in 30 seconds will be able to tell me. But if I ask you why, then you may take more than 30 seconds to answer that, because it's not something super easy to rationalize and to answer. So that's where we started this presentation and this research study. We know that sports really have all the raw material for fantastic stories, fantastic and memorable characters, high stakes, big rivalries. And we see players becoming bigger than men and women right in front of our eyes, right? Sometimes villains, sometimes heroes. But just because sports can create amazing stories, it doesn't mean they always do. And this slide is just a joke. I don't think summer catch is all that bad. But we really kicked this project to understand what makes for the most, again, outstanding and memorable sports stories out there, according to our sports fans. What makes a sports story so powerful? So this is how we got there. This is the storytelling program design, the methodology that we use to get to the insights that I'm going to show you in a minute. So we started with a qualitative phase where we talked to experts in storytelling, both within ESPN and outside of ESPN. After that, we had 56 fan diaries. So pretty much we gave homework to 56 fans in the US for about a week. We showed them stories and had a couple of questions after that, nothing super deep at that point. But then we followed with 8 focus groups in the West and East Coast. So that's where we dig a little bit deeper in a qualitative phase on why they like the stories they like. And after this first phase, we already identified 18 main qualities that describe the best, the favorite, the most powerful sports stories according to fans. You don't need to read all of them. We will get to them in a minute. But after the qual, we really identified those 18 qualities or attributes. And then the biggest challenge came. How do we measure that, right? How we put numbers and really quantify how important each of those qualities are. Then we decided to go with a survey here in the US with 1,200 sports fans. And how do you ask about storytelling to people, not only to sports fans, but to people? Well, we showed them stories and then asked questions. So that's how we did it. We selected over 60 videos, short format stories from ESPN and from competitors, and included the leagues that we were really most interested in measuring. So those are the NBA, the NFL, MLB, NHL, MLS, tennis, and golf. So fans rated each of those stories according to 4 main KPIs. So what for us made a story successful? What's the definition of success for us? 4 KPIs. First one, entertainment value. So the pure entertainment value of that story. Second one, brand affinity. How much equity and affinity that story was driving to the brand that was telling that story. Third one, league affinity. How much affinity that story was driving to the league, to the sport that was being portrayed in that story. And 4, likelihood to recommend. How likely are fans to recommend and share that story? So those 4 KPIs were really the measure of success. So fans rated this more than 60 short format stories according to those 4 KPIs and the 18 attributes that I just mentioned. And we'll get back to them in a minute. After all of that, after that field work, we applied a regression model. We applied a structural equations modeling to really understand the relationship between all of those variables. So between the attributes, the sports, and the KPIs. This model divided the 18 attributes that I mentioned to you, not the modeling, not us, into 5 main groups, what we are calling the 5 qualities of powerful sports stories. And here you have them. So the first one is relatability. You see in a minute. It's the most important one by far. We care and we spend more time and energy with a story because we have a personal connection, because of that relatability. Second, substance. We understand what's going on, so we care about it. The third one is provocation. That story makes me react emotionally, so I form an opinion, I form a perspective. Fourth one, humor. It makes me laugh. So I remember, we know that humor is really triggers memory. So humor is an important one. And the fifth, quality conversation. I feel as if I'm almost part of that conversation. I feel comfortable. So I lean and spend more time with that story. We'll dig deeper into each of them in a minute. This is what when I mentioned that we ran a regression, a predictive model. This is the predictive power of that model. We know that a lot of the reasons why you like or you dislike a story are subjective, are personal, especially in sports. You may have played that sport when you were at college, so you can relate to that story because it's about that sport or about that college. Maybe you played that sport with your father when you were young. So we know that a lot of the reasons are subjective. So we were really trying to get a predictive model that could understand, it could predict the objective part of that decision, of that appreciation for stories. And we were very happy when we saw those numbers. We After running a few models, we understood that the 18 attributes that I mentioned to you, divided into the 5 groups, the 5 qualities, explain from 64 to 77% of the reasons why you find a story entertaining, 74% of the reasons why you like the brand that's is telling that story, 66% of the reasons why you recommend that story with others, and finally 64% of the reasons why you like the league, you like the sport that is in that story. So we were very happy with the predictive power of the model because we knew a lot of the reasons were personal, subjective. But the exact role of each quality really depends on the KPI, on the impact that you're trying to drive. And on your right here on the slide, you see the 4 KPIs. And you can all very easily see that relatability, the orange part of this graph, is by far the most important quality. It explains most of the reasons or most of the drivers of the 4 KPIs. But then the other qualities come to complement, and it really depends on the KPI and the goal that you have with that story. So, for example, for brand affinity, substance is especially important. For humor, especially important for league affinity, and we'll get there in a minute. Provocation is especially important for league affinity and recommendation. So, what we say is that relatability is important and essential to every story, and then you should play with the other qualities depending on the goal that you have. So without further ado, let's dig a little bit deeper and see some examples of real videos that we used in the survey that will help us understand and have more concrete examples of what that means. So starting with the most important one by far, relatability, is really creating that personal connection. And because you create that personal connection, people just invest more time, more energy into that story. And as I like saying, they engage both with head and heart with that story. It's really about showing people in new ways and sometimes humanizing the superhuman to bring that personal connection to life. I'm going to show you some examples during the presentation. And as I just mentioned, those are real examples that we used in the field work. So these examples are videos that perform ranked really high in that particular quality. So this is a video that ranked really high in relatability. This is a piece from E60. And for those of you who like sports, especially hockey in this case, this is a video about a tragic accident that happened a couple of years ago in Colorado with a hockey team. It was a bus accident that unfortunately killed most of that team. So it really shows the struggle of the team to, of course, deal with that feeling, deal with that tragedy that happened, while at the same time they had to rebuild almost the whole team from zero. So hope you enjoy it and you can see why it's so related.
I thought that it was important to the community of Humboldt that I don't bail on them.
Hockey is where we live, where we can best meet and overcome our pain and wrong and deaths. Life is just a place where we spend time between games.
And this is, of course, only a piece of that story. That story is longer. This is just a piece. But you can really see that seeing the passion of others can really draw us emotionally. The second quality is substance. It's not just knowing what happened, but why it matters. Why should I care about that story? It's really bringing the analysis, reading the facts and the context that can help us appreciating that story more. There is a quote from one of the focus groups that I think explained that perfectly. The more you know, the more you want to watch. The more you understand what's happening in court, in field, the more you want to watch that story. And substance uses facts, analysis, insight to build understanding in three main levels. So the first one is close-up current, is really showing what's going on right now, is offering an objective analysis of what just happened. The second one is showing history, is really providing the historical information that will help fans understand why what's going on today matters and what happened to bring us to this point. And the third one is scientific insight, is bringing a new, fresh, authentic perspective that make people understand a little bit more about what's going on and have a little fun in the process. I'm a big tennis fan, but that's not the only reason why this video is here. This video performed really high in that quality and substance, and it's a great example of how a scientific insight is a unique way to provide that fresh perspective, and that makes you understand more and appreciate more that sport or that story.
Emitting a loud grunt might help psych you up, but it's not the noise that helps physically. What helps is the short, powerful exhalation of breath that comes with the grunt. Studies have shown that when a tennis player exhales quickly and forcefully, core muscles tighten and the upper body becomes more stable and can more efficiently transfer energy to the ball. In fact, using this breathing technique can increase ball velocity by about 4%. But if you do grunt loudly, the timing can definitely have an effect on an opponent.
So I did know that grunting had a psychological effect on the game, but I had no idea that could add up to 4% velocity to the ball. So it made me appreciate the game better and understand, especially when I hear that grunting when I'm watching tennis. The third quality is provocation, is really using provocative stories to make you feel something. And because you feel something, it helps you shape in your opinion. It helps you shape your perspective. And a big way of doing that is bold statements that really have the power to shape us, to make us think. And because we think and we feel, that story can help you form your opinion, your perspective. And we know that a classic and very strong way of bringing that provocation to life is through impassioned debate. Debate is a great way to help fans clarify opinions and really, love it or hate it, make their opinion. And there is a very interesting step that I want to point to you in the right side of this slide. During the qualitative phase, so during the groups, we talk to younger fans, so younger Gen Z fans, and we also talk to older millennials, 30 years or more or older. And we heard that they had very different opinions about this topic. While the older millennials didn't expect media outlets like ESPN to bring opinions to the table, they want the facts, they want us to be objective and give them the facts that they can form their opinion. The younger fans totally disagree. They actually want us to be opinionated, to be bold, and show where we stand. They want us, our talents, so our hosts and commentators and callers, to have opinions. They say, I may agree, I may disagree, I may love it, I may hate it, but I want brands to have opinions. And that's super important. It's a big challenge, but super important. And it gets me back to the stat on your right in the slide. When we went to the quantitative phase, we saw that provocative content has 7 times more impact on entertainment value for Gen Z. So we not only confirmed that, the qualitative finding, but we saw that huge number, 7 times more impact. So it's a challenge. How do you cater to two generations that think so alike, that expect brands to have such different perspectives and bring such different opinions or facts to the table? So it is an interesting one that made us think, and I'm sure will make you think as well. For quality, humor is providing that brief release from the intensity that watching sports can be. If you're a sports fan, you may understand that, especially when it's a big game, especially when your team is playing, it can be a pretty stressful and intense moment. So humor comes to provide that release from the intensity. But it has to be more than jokes. It has to be more than pre-rehearsed jokes. It has to be playful but authentic. It has to feel genuine. It cannot feel forced. And another interesting thing is that we saw that humor is 1.4 times more important to entertainment value for 2 specific sports, soccer and baseball. And you may be asking yourself why. I'll tell you why. Our fans see both of those sports as slower, lower scoring games. It's true, some games, especially soccer and baseball, can feel like nothing happens, can feel very slow. So humor comes not only to provide the release of that stress and intensity, but also to provide relief when nothing is happening, when the game feels very slow. So humor comes to complement and bring something to the story. And fifth quality, last but not least, still very important, is conversational. Is really using the story to invite fans to participate in the dialogue. Is making them feel comfortable, making them feel almost as part of that conversation, almost as if they were talking to us on the other side of the screen, whatever screen you're using. And because they feel so comfortable, they invest more time and energy with the story. I'll quickly wrap up with the impact of all of that at ESPN. And this is only a summary, but we also measured our proficiency versus the main storytellers in the media market. And we saw that ESPN leads in the most important storytelling qualities with all the ages that we tested. But our challenge is really to maintain that lead with stories that continue to dominate in substance. We know that fans really appreciate our credibility, the facts that we bring, the deep analysis. So it's really to continue to dominate in substance, building that trust and bringing that objective context and facts. But differentiating with relatability. Really, I always tell the content teams that if there's one thing that I want them to leave the room remembering, is the power of relatability. Is really exploring the breadth of relatability through fresh formats, fresh approaches, and how important it is to try to be relatable in every story that we tell. And deliver more lighthearted and provocative moments that are still fit our style, fit our brand DNA. So really connected to what our brand stands for, but integrating more funny, lighthearted moments and integrating more surprise and provocative formats that can, again, surprise and help our fans, especially the younger generations, to connect with stories. And I just wanted to provide an example of a recent example from The Last Dance. I don't know how many of you have watched or heard about The Last Dance. It was a 10-episode series that we aired in the height of the pandemic, started in April, about the Chicago Bulls. Not only Michael Jordan is the main character, but the Bulls and their last championship in the 90s. And it's really a masterpiece of storytelling. It has the luxury of time. Again, it's 10 episodes of an hour. So because it has the time, the director was able to integrate the 5 qualities. So you feel provocation, you feel humor, you will feel a lot of substance. There's a lot of facts in the series. But more than that, it's a masterpiece of relatability. If you didn't watch, I'll invite you to watch. It's now on Netflix. The director did a fantastic job humanizing the superhuman. So after watching it, you feel that Michael Jordan is a fantastic, maybe the best basketball player ever, but he's a human. He's a human with anxieties, with frustrations. He thought about quitting and actually quit once, came back, went to play baseball, but came back. So he's not that all power superhuman. The director also did a phenomenal job integrating other characters to the story. So although Jordan is the main pillar, the main character, it's fantastic to see how the story develops with the other players, with the coach, with the other really components of that amazing year, of that amazing decade. And again, it is authentic. If you watch, you will see how authentic Michael Jordan, especially Jordan, was. He answered tough questions and he feels like he's genuine. He feels like he's honest and authentic. And that is fantastic to create relatability. And that's, if you didn't watch, I invite you to watch. Is a masterpiece of storytelling, not only because he was able to integrate the 5 qualities, but it's a masterpiece of relatability. So thank you so much. I hope it was helpful and insightful. Thank you.
So thank you, Renata, for that excellent presentation. It was definitely a delight to hear more about ESPN's approach to storytelling and some of the facts you learned that came out of that research you did. So I think something that is really maybe top of everyone's mind right now is that this year with COVID-19, we saw, of course, some very radical changes in the sports landscape. A number of games were canceled or delayed earlier this year, and then we had something of an abbreviated season in this fall. So how has ESPN's approach to storytelling changed and evolved in the face of that? Can you maybe give some examples?
That's a great question. So I think it showed us, this whole pandemic, especially in the beginning, it showed us even more the importance of relatability, the importance of empathy. Empathy is pure relatability, right? It's showing your fan, your consumer, that you know what he or she is going through. That's pure relatability. And ESPN, right in the beginning of the pandemic, released a marketing campaign when we had all the live games put on hold. We just told fans, we miss it you. We know you miss sports. We miss it you. So it really brought the importance of relatability and empathy as an element of relatability to an even higher standard, to an even higher level of importance. And I think that empathy has been guiding us through all this process. Now we have live games, now we have live sports back, but during that critical period of a few months when we didn't have live sports, it was all about creating that experience for fans based on empathy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yes, I know a continuation of what you learned in 2019, but really emphasizing the importance of that. So could you maybe discuss briefly how ESPN's approach to social might have changed? So of course, with with the games not being available earlier this year, there was a lot of emphasis on older content and also using the social channel to further drive engagement with fans.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think one big pillar that we had, again, especially during that critical moment when we didn't have live games, was empathy, was really trying to provide to fans some sort of relief to the craziness that was going on around them, right? So we more than ever relied on our talent, so our commentators, our hosts, our, to bring their perspective about COVID, but about what was going on around us. We did not have live games in the beginning of the pandemic after March 12th, but we had the NFL draft. We had some things going on. And then in mid-April, we launched The Last Dance that I just mentioned during the presentation. And it was really a way of telling fans, hey, so The Last Dance was supposed to be released in the middle of the summer, in July, around NBA playoffs. And the production teams at ESPN ran around the clock to edit and really finalize the post-production to bring that to fans in a moment that we didn't have live games, and sports fans were missing sports so much. And we knew it would be a 10-week, tentpole that we really knew how strong the content was. And we knew that fans would appreciate us bringing that kind of content in a moment of need, right? And really the peak of the pandemic, the peak of the lockdown, right? Not the peak of the pandemic, but the peak of the lockdown, the peak of anxiety.
She froze on my end.
Okay. Shoot.
Entertainment in the best way that we can.
Renata, you froze there just for a second when you said the peak of anxiety, and then it froze. I don't know if you kind of want to start from that last thought and repeat, or whatever you'd like to do.
I can repeat the last part, no problem.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so that was really the main. I want to say in our social, it was really the main focus. It's really when we were able to provide that relief from the anxiety. And Last Dance was released in the peak of not only the peak of pandemic, but the peak of the lockdown, the peak of anxiety. So being able to bring that to fans and to interact to them through social and the other channels to say, hey, we know what you're going through. We are here to bring you some sports entertainment, to bring you some relief from that craziness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very, very good use of the channels. So I think something else that is really top of mind for everyone is that so we're currently seeing here in the U.S. something of a resurgence of COVID-19 with a growing number of cases really across the country. Of course, there's a very strong likelihood that this is going to impact sports next year as well, particularly in the spring, possibly in the fall, depending on what ends up going on with the vaccine situation. What are ESPN's plans with regards to this, if you can share?
Of course. So I think there are two pillars to that, to how ESPN is really managing all of that back to live sports. One is our relationship with the leagues. So we are really partnering closely with the leagues to try to offer the safest environment for everyone, for players, for our own, talent, our own people there. One good example is the NBA bubble that happened in Orlando. It was a super safe space. There were no cases of COVID, really, almost no cases. It was inside Disney World. So Disney, ESPN is part of Disney, really is partnering with the MLS. MLS is back tournament in the summer also happened inside Disney. So we are partnering with leagues to offer the safest environment, and we are helping them in the best way that we can. But the second side of that is how, with all the restrictions that COVID brings, to keep players, fans, our team safe, how can we offer the best experience that we can for fans? How can that experience feel the best, the most authentic, or the most special? So I'll get back to the NBA example again. For the first time, we had microphones under the court. We had more than 30 microphones under the court. So although we didn't have fans in the stands, fans at home could hear the players speaking amongst themselves, the noise of the ball, the squeak of the tennis shoes. And that was something like, okay, this is different. But this can be special. This can bring to you an experience that you wouldn't have otherwise. That's only one example of the innovation that with the leagues we are investing to bring to fans the best experience that we can, given the circumstances.
It sounds like there's a lot of room to be very innovative in your approach.
For sure. For sure.
Okay. Well, thank you, Renata, so much for joining us here today. I believe, unfortunately, that's all that we have time for, but it was absolutely wonderful listening to the research that you've done and your perspective as well.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.